couple of other wee issues. Very simple to check these ones. The aux belt on these, for some reason, people just seem to never ever change them, but as a consumable part, they do fail. When I first got this car, it was 8 years old, and the belt looked original. It was cracks all over it. It was ready to go. I changed it, fine, no bother. I think the belt was 30 quid, so didn't change it in 20 minutes. Not a hassle. But if you leave it and it goes, it can snap pulleys. The pulleys can also go, but a lot of the time it's the belt that snaps and then wrecks the pulleys and everything else, giving you an expensive repair bill that's unnecessary for the sake of a cheap belt. As well as that, these cars are known to kill power steering pumps, but a lot of the time it's because people let the power steering fluid go too low. The power steering reservoir, it's actually under one of the covers in the engine. You just pop the cover up right at the front and it's there, but people just seem to never ever check it. Again, when I got this car, I didn't even lift it up, checked it. There was no fluid that I could see in the reservoir at all. I don't know how low it was. There's a specific type of fluid you need to use. It's not normal power steering fluid. But if you check up the manual, you can see I got some topped up, and thankfully it's been fine, no trouble. Another wee issue you might see is rattling rear heat shields on the back boxes. This is due to them being aluminium and being fixed on with steel fasteners, and obviously the two metals causes a bit of corrosion. It's easily fixed. You can just use some plastic washers and some new nuts and you won't get the problem again. That's what I did. No had a problem since. But again, it was another problem that was evident when I first got the car. It was right there at the start. I didn't notice it until I'd actually got the car home, and it's the next day I started it up and I was driving out my street. I had the windows down, listening to the exhaust as you do, and every time I hit a bump I could hear rattling, and obviously, you know what it's like, panic straight away, but thankfully it was just a cheap job to fix. One other potential issue that a lot of people don't seem to know about is the rear arches under the plastic covers. There's quite a bad dirt trap. First got the car, put it up on the ramp, and I took all the covers off and I noticed it straight away. There was an incredible amount of muck I got out. It was starting to corrode underneath where all that muck was. Thankfully I got it in time, treated it, painted it again. All good, not any issues since, but I do plan to check that every year just so that there's no issues down the line, because it was pretty bad when I first seen it, but managed to stop it. One final thing that it's worth checking on these cars is this car, again standard, it's got Brembo brakes all round, and you've got these Brembo calipers, Brembo fixed calipers on a lot of different cars out there, and because they're on there and they end up on there for years. Some of these cars don't do a lot of miles, so the brake discs and pads end up in there for a long time, and there's pins that hold in the brake pads and they absolutely season rock solid. I mean, you have to hammer them to death to get them out. You've got special tools for punching out the pins, but even then it's still quite tricky. Best thing to do is leave it soaking in penetrating fluid for a good number of days before you try and get them out. That's what I had to do. I first tried to hammer them out, thought it'd be easy, but it wasn't. But after a good few days soaking, they actually come out not too bad. Another wee thing you look out for on those Brembo calipers is bleed nipples. They're quite fragile and prone to snapping, and then through that, people don't change the brake fluid either because they can't. So just be aware of that. If they're needing done, it cost me £35 per bleed nipple. I sent them away all four calipers. I think that was in total just over 200 quid. But it was well worth it, because then you know you can change the fluid and you can be assured your braking system's good. A car like this, you don't want to be jumping about with old brake fluid. If you're hammering the brakes after that, then you never know, you might overheat them if there's too much water in there, and you don't want to be doing that if you're flying about. Another couple of issues to be aware of would be the intake and rocker cover gaskets. Both of those have been known to fail. There is sometimes a bit of a waiting list getting parts. You can wait a few months to get those parts from Germany. I know there's people waiting on them just now because they're out of stock. I've not had the issue yet, but I'm quite sure at some point in the future I will have. One other issue that these engines are known to have is oil leaks. A lot of them, the engines certainly, there's a lower, middle, upper half, and rather than gaskets everywhere, a lot of it's put together with sealants, and it does tend to leak a wee bit. See if it's minor, if you've just got a wee bit of weeping, it's a minor leak. If it's right in the middle of the engine, you're best left well alone. You could spend a fortune just for that. If it's a serious leak, it'd be worth getting looked at, but if it's like the the kind of oil sump, etc. Down there, again, depending on how serious it was, you'd need to consider it on a case by case basis. If it was a major oil leak, definitely fix it. But if you've just got a wee dribble, I'd keep your eye on it and see how it went before spending fortunes. Being a facelift model, for the gearbox modes, you've got a few different modes. You've got comfort, which is fine for just messing around town. It's quite slow to change down if you're wanting to put the foot down, but it's good, a bit better than fuel consumption. Not much better when you've got a 6 litre V8, but it does, it changes up nice and early. So if you're wanting to just cruise, it'll do that for you. If you flick it around to sport, just a wee kind of circular selector dial, that's a wee bit better. If you put the foot down, it's looking to change down quicker for you. It'll still change up, it will still look to change gears up, but it's a bit better than comfort, and you've always got your paddles. After that, flick it around to Sport Plus. That's where it gets a lot more interesting. The car is looking to, if you put the foot down, it'll change down a lot quicker, and it'll hold the gears out really well, right up to the rev limiter. It does tend to hold onto gears a wee bit too long though, so if you floor it and then back off, it's not going to change up. It just sits, if you're in second gear and put the foot down, hit the rev limiter, backed off, it tends to just sit there in second gear rather than, changing up again. It's waiting for you to put the foot back down, which can be a bit annoying. You do have the paddles though to override that. Finally, you've got manual mode. That's the mode I would use most of the time if I was looking to enjoy the car. It just means you've got full control. That's where you do notice the fact that although this is the MCT gearbox and the facelift, and it does shift quicker than the older car, it's still not as quick as your latest modern stuff, So you're asking it for a gear change. There's just that wee pause before it does it. You don't notice it in Sport Plus, but when you're actually asking it to change, that's kind of when you notice the age of the car. But it doesn't really detract from it. I still love it. It's still a great performing car. Still got the drama, so it's well worth having. Finally, you've got RS on this, and that's the kind of race start mode. To me, it's more of a novelty. I tried it once, and it's not really like the traction control or launch control you get, on like Nissan GTRs and things like that. It's nowhere near that kind of thing. I tried it, it was okay, but I probably won't ever use it again, but it's nice to try it once. Try to kind of give you as much info as I can there, just for what I've noticed in the last couple of years. Overall, I would still say they're a really, really reliable car. Any performance car you get, you're going to have to spend money on it. If you think you can buy a car like this, any BMW M cars, Nissan GTRs, stuff, you can't buy them and, not have any bother or any trouble. You're going to have to spend money at some point. I think I've been quite lucky that other than standard servicing, tyres, brake disc and pads, that's all most of the normal stuff. The only other real thing I had to spend money on, aux belt, 20 quid. There was a camshaft sensor, I think it was at 25, and a front wheel bearing field. And a hub cost me 250, and it was about 50 quid to fit. But other than that, that's it. For me, that's money well spent, because for the fun you get in this car, it's more than worth it. I've had all sorts of other cars, but for the performance you get, the noise, the drama, and it's just brilliant. It's comfort as well, that's the thing. It's a nice car, it's still a nice place to be, even though it's a 10-year-old car. That's all I can really think of now. I think it's plenty to get you going if you're looking at one of these cars. There's a whole host of stuff to give you ideas of what to look for, and hopefully that helps somebody out.